If you can sense the slightest change in your partner or in your relationship, this video is probably for you. Let's talk about anxious attachment style. If you don't already know, my name is Simone Saunders. I'm a licensed therapist and social worker in Calgary, Alberta, and this channel is all about bringing you tips, tricks, psychoeducation, and my occasional opinion. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and welcome to the community. Dr. Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, who are the authors of the book Attached, which is widely known, and if you haven't read it, I strongly recommend that you do. They describe anxious attachment like having a sixth sense for danger at all times. If you haven't seen my previous video explaining what the attachment system is, then I highly recommend you go back and watch that one first. I will tag it as well. Typically, people who have anxious attachment styles have been described as clingy, needing reassurance all the time, and it can be difficult to manage in relationships at times. And this is because people who have anxious attachment styles have more sensitive attachment systems. So when we think about the attachment system, again, we're thinking about that psychological immune system that I talked about in the previous video. So when the attachment system gets activated for those who are anxiously attached, the underlying assumption or the fear is, what if this person leaves me? What if my needs no longer get met? So in order to combat that fear, the person does whatever they can to pull that person closer and ensure that those needs are met. And if no other need is met, at least the need of having someone to attach to is met. So if you have an anxious attachment style, you might notice that you find yourself in relationships where you may not be getting any of your needs met, but that need of companionship trumps absolutely everything. So the reason that this attachment style even develops in the first place is because needs are met inconsistently as a child. And so the child doesn't know when those needs are going to be met, and so they cling on to the times when the parent does meet those needs or is in close proximity in fear of, what if I don't get this again? Some thoughts or behaviors that people who have anxious attachment style might notice is putting their partner on a pedestal and feeling like, this is the best person I'm going to get, this is the only person that understands me. Finding yourself being obsessive about your partner and mostly thinking about them and having a difficult time concentrating on anything else. Dismissing the faults in your partner and only thinking about the good things. And when you're apart, you have this anxious feeling that only goes away when you're in contact with them again. The way that the system works is that people who are anxiously attached are always looking for some sort of danger, a sign that their relationship is threatened. An example of that might be, it's getting close to the weekend, you haven't heard from your boyfriend, and maybe typically he checks in with you on Wednesday to figure out when you guys can make plans and see each other for the weekend. It is now Thursday and you're starting to freak out. So that is the feeling that my relationship is threatened in some capacity. And so attachment system activated. So let's say you connect with him and you say, hey, you know what, I would really like to see you this weekend. What are your plans? And he says, hey, you know what, this is a really busy weekend for me. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before, but I don't know if we'll be able to see each other this weekend. We might have to wait until during the week next week or over next weekend. So immediately your system goes into fight or flight because your typical routine is seeing each other every single weekend. Typically, this is when the anxiously attached partner would try and seek some sort of reassurance or seek some sort of connection with the partner. So that can look like a variety of ways and typically differs from person to person, but is also fairly consistent. That might mean picking a fight, pushing the boundaries, incessantly calling and texting over the weekend because you're so anxious and you don't know what's going on. All of those behaviors are protest behaviors. Protest behaviors are any behaviors that you engage in when your attachment system is activated, and the intent of those behaviors is to increase proximity to your partner and deactivate the attachment system. So for example, if your partner's on a night out and you continue to text and text and text and text, and finally they pick up the phone, even if it's a fight, you are in connection with them. There's some sort of proximity, regardless of the nature of it. So what seems contradictory sometimes with protest behaviors is that oftentimes protest behaviors push people away, even though the intention of them is to pull them closer. So even you might threaten to leave the relationship with the intent, whether it's conscious or subconscious, of wanting them to pull you back in and say, no, I really love you, I want to work on this, etc., etc. You might give your partner the silent treatment. Again, counterintuitive because the goal is to pull them closer. You might also engage in behaviors that attempt to make your partner jealous. And again, when we look at it logically, it's counterintuitive to the actual goal of establishing connection. The point of it is to activate your partner into displaying some sort of behavior that shows that I still care about you, I still want you, I'm still here with you. What's interesting is that oftentimes people who are anxiously attached tend to go for people who are avoidantly attached, which is the absolute worst mixture in relationships because avoidants tend to push you away while anxiously attached people try and pull you closer. And so it's often just this push, pull dynamic. So here are a few tips and tricks if you're anxiously attached and you're single or in a relationship. Get to know your nervous system. It's so important to understand what activates your nervous system, what behaviors, what thoughts, what patterns, what people, what experiences. Reflect on your previous intimate relationships as well as your platonic relationships to see where that behavior is present. When do you typically engage in protest behaviors and what triggers those systems for you? Working on healthy communication is going to be crucial for this because instead of engaging in protest behaviors, what's needed is to communicate, hey, I'm feeling really vulnerable right now. Hey, I'm really needing reassurance right now. Hey, I'm X, Y, and Z. When you get to know your brain and your body a little bit better and your nervous system, it's much easier to separate and understand, okay, this is my nervous system being activated by this external element. Rather than this is happening because they don't love me, they don't care about me, I need to pull them closer. And if you're finding that this is something that is really hard for you to manage on your own, seek out some support. There's no shame in doing that. And oftentimes, a lot of the things that we do or the behaviors that we engage in, we don't see. And it can be helpful for someone to have a bird's eye view perspective on that. If you're interested in learning more about your attachment system, your nervous system, attachment styles in general, hit that subscribe button because there will be so much more that's coming our way. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments below and I will try to get back to as many as I can. And I will see you guys all in the next video.